Welcome everyone, KD here with another video, and this time I want to talk about different graphic styles and explicit about stylistic graphics versus more realistic graphics. Now with E3 almost over, we have seen kind of what the new wave of games will bring graphic wise, and I want to compare two specific games, one stylistic graphics and the other one for more realistic graphic. Even one of these trailers we saw and even gameplay reveal we saw was not from E3 because Sony wasn't at E3, and I want to talk about Death Stranding. Trailer we saw shortly before E3 came out with gameplay and everything. And I also want to look at Final Fantasy VII Remake again. Death Stranding has it goes a very realistic route. I mean, of course, there are fantastic elements in the game, but when we look at the facial animations and the whole graphics, it goes a very realistic route. While Final Fantasy VII still has a very stylistic graphic direction, art direction. When we look at, I mean, it's very detailed. Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's extremely detailed, but it still resembles the old characters that are very anime style, a little bit cartoonish, if you want to say it like this, but definitely has still goes more kind of like very detailed, but still more in the direction of anime characters and not like Death Stranding realistic human characters. And if I compare the two right now, I can give you already my feelings uh, beforehand, and and this will be maybe an unpopular opinion, but I like the stylistic way that Final Fantasy VII Remake goes a lot more than the realistic way that Death Stranding goes. And here's kind of why. When I watched the Death Stranding trailer and gameplay and so on, first it was kind of like, whoa, this looks very good. But then when went closer to the faces and so on, I was kind of creeped out by the expressions and so on what we saw. I mean, the graphics are extremely detailed, the animations are amazing and everything, and still, even so, there is something off with the animations in Death Stranding. And that's a problem with the realistic graphic style. If you go very realistic and the animations are just a little bit off, this little bit that just stands out, and something is kind of like, oh, what is going on there? You just feel it that something is a little bit off, that it almost seems like a robot or something like that that is talking there. The reason for that is that it's probably almost impossible. I won't say it's impossible, but it's probably very, very difficult to um, intimidate very correctly human facial expression, because there are so many muscles that work behind it. And even with motion capture and so on, you still have to work with these 3D models, and like I said, is just a little bit something off. You just feel it, you can see it. And of course you can ignore it, but it's still kind of there. And maybe some of you disagree and say, no, that looks all perfect, Death Stranding and so on. I will disagree. I don't think it looks perfect. And that's kind of where the problem is there. While on the other hand, when we look at the stylistic style direction we have with Final Fantasy VII Remake, there's we are used to anime characters or more cartoonish characters to kind of have this over the top expression, so it doesn't matter that much there, at least for me. So at least for me, it doesn't matter that much the expression are not 100% correct or so on, because it's stylistic. If you have a hint on what the expression should be, that's already fine there. Well, again, back to the realistic style, there has everything has to be correct, or like I said, something feels off and that it feels strange. Stylistic, there is not a problem. And with that in mind, I think we will see more and more game devs going away from the more realistic style to a more stylistic graphic art. And this is, of course, a very, very bold claim by me, but let me explain why I personally think this will be. One thing is it's hard to stand out when you want to go realistic graphics. The problem is it may take a couple of months and there will be a game coming out that looks better. But on the other hand, stylistic art styles, if you have a very interesting art direction, people will remember your game. If you even look at the old Final Fantasy VII, it has the classic one, it has a very unique art style, but if you see a picture of Final Fantasy VII, you can immediately say this is Final Fantasy VII, even if you're not a fan. Maybe even if you never have played it and just saw pictures, you immediately recognize it. I'm pretty sure for many fans, not only for me, it has its own little charm, the graphics that we saw Final Fantasy VII. I can say other examples except for Final Fantasy VII as example very unique at the time and that very easy that you can really easy identify and remember is as example a very very simple art style like Minecraft. Of course, it was a million time copied. It's still copied up to this day, and still Minecraft had such an unique art style. This will be a game that will be remembered for hundreds of years for what it was, even with this very very simple graphics. Another example would be Undertale. Even for pixel art, it has a very unique, special graphic style that you will remember. And then the master of stylistic graphic, Persona 5. Persona 5, it hasn't very detailed graphics like Final Fantasy VII Remake or anything like that. It has actually, I wouldn't say very simple graphics, but not actually next gen graphics, if you want to say it like this. And the animations too, they're not that many animations, and except for maybe the combat animations, they are not that complicated or and very repetitive actually when we look at the story. And still, even with that, the art style, the art direction of the game is so unique and it looks so amazing that people will remember the game, people will see the game. And it looks fantastic. It absolutely looks fantastic, even without having next gen and very realistic graphics. So this is one reason why I think stylistic graphic we will see this more and more. The second reason is very simple, and that's a money factor. It is very difficult to go more and more realistic. The problem is that everything that takes effort uh, is not just a simple curve or anything like that, or a steep line that goes up. It's more like a parable. When we look at the diagram of a parable, and that is, by the way, for everything. It's for if you want to learn something, as example, if you want to learn a language, uh, or if you want to learn martial arts or anything like that, get a decent amount of result for not that much effort putting in. But then there is this point where the curve gets flatter and flatter and flatter, and you have to put more and more and more effort into it to get better in the thing you do. Like I said, learning a language or martial art, you have to train more and more and more and more if you want to get better. If you look at video games like graphics, effort is equal money. You have to put money into getting experts, getting new tools, getting new softwares, teaching your employees to get used to these new softwares and tools and so on. So it's very expensive. It gets very expensive at a certain point when you want better and better graphics. And we are really at the point where we are at a very flat uh, point of the parable, where you have to put a lot of money into for just a small amount of a better result, to just stick a little bit out of the competition. And the problem is there will be someone that puts more money into, and then your game will go under because there is another game that a little bit stands out again out of the competition. And we are really in that section with games again. And also when we look at the moment with games, we have this very high resolution, very realistic graphics, and it's extremely difficult to stand out. I mean, just think about it. When I go back to what I said before, I mean, seriously, how many realistic games that use realistic graphics do you really remember? Because I can't really say one very special stuck out for me right now. Well, I already told you some examples for stylistic graphics. The other thing is because it's so expensive, indie companies uh, or just not AAA companies, they will look for alternatives, and realistic graphics is not the alternative here. Stylistic graphic is the alternative here, that you can make a lot cheap with something a lot cheaper, of course. And if you have a very interesting art direction, it's almost better than going taking the realistic route. The other thing here is also when we look at animations, and that's what I said before. Animations feel off. I mean, it's one thing to have graphics that look very realistic. It's another thing to have matching animation. And if I compare this generation with the last generation, PS3, Xbox 360 versus PS4, Xbox One, the thing that makes game more immersive for me are not the jump we made with the graphics, is the jump we made with the animations. This is maybe different. Maybe you would feel different and say, no. For me, the graphics are much more immersive. But maybe compare a PlayStation 3 game versus a PlayStation 4 game, and just look at how clunky the animations still were back then, and how motion capture and everything, how much this stuff improved, and really the animations improved massively. And there is this kind of problem, absolutely, for indie developers. If you have the right engine, if you have the right assets, you may get pretty fast to a decent looking game. But then if the animations are bad made, you kind of lose the effect of the graphics pretty fast. So you need this matching thing with graphics and animations. It would be even better if the animations are better than the graphics. And again, this is bringing the animations up. This is again a cost factor. You need motion capture and this stuff. You need um, actors, and then still you need people who can bring uh, the motions to a 3D model, and the 3D model has to be made right, and so on. It's pretty difficult and expensive. So this is kind of the second reason, money reason. Stylistic graphics is really cheaper. You can cheat more with the animations, making the animations a little bit over the top. That's fine. You can't do that with realistic graphic, because it doesn't feel right there. And the third reason, because I'm saying that we will maybe see a shift more to stylistic graphics, is because we actually have in the history a very close example to graphics in video games, and that's art itself, drawing pictures. When we look back to where it started with the drawing, we saw people didn't have the knowledge at first. The best example is taking humans. People didn't have this knowledge about human autonomy, about perspectives, and stuff like that. So they tried their best with the knowledge they had then to draw humans as good as possible, even if they kind of were off, if perspective were off, if some limbs were longer than others and so on. The main point here was to have with this limited knowledge to bring the things to life you wanted. And when we look at games, it's a little bit different, but it's also kind of the same. There it's not the knowledge of the people were not there, but just the hardware technology was not there. So when we look back, we can take Final Fantasy VII as a very good example there. We see that they're not really humans, but they are human-like. So it's kind of like you have to be creative to bring your vision you have, bring it to life. And that was the same back then when the people didn't have the knowledge of all these things that we have now when we draw pictures and so on. So they had to be creative, they had to be stylish to kind of bring their visions to life. Then slowly after that, we see more and more realistic pictures made, and the drawing techniques evolved. People learned about perspectives, about the human bodies. They learned more where the muscles were, and so on. And so everything got more realistic. Everyone tried to be as realistic as possible. But then what happened? I mean, these are pictures that we don't see that much made anymore. We can still go into a museum and look the Monets and the Van Goghs and stuff like that. We can go watch this realistic one. But what came after that? The Picassos and so on. Sorry, I'm not too good in art. I don't know all of them. People who and Picasso, yes, he made some more realistic stuff, but he made a lot of abstract pictures, stuff like that went away pretty strongly from realistic. And when we look at video games, like I said, we are right now at the point where we have the technology and the technique and everything to make very realistic graphics. The question is just how long will people still enjoy these graphics, or will be more interesting to go in a more abstract way to kind of have different visions, and so on, if people start to enjoy more this stuff than the realistic drawn stuff. That's kind of my third point I want to make here, because we have already an example in the history, and I think this is also like what I already said in the games, because at the point we are now with the realism in games, in the graphics, it's hard to stand out. It's easy to stand out if you take a stylistic route, actually. So kind of, and I think was maybe also in. I can't say it 100%. Like I said, I'm not an expert in art, but maybe that was also the reason why we suddenly went from this realistic drawings to very abstract, more stylistic drawings. So kind of that's my 3 points why I think stylistic graphics come more and more, and we may see less and less really realistic attempts of going very realistic with game graphics. So if you really like realistic graphics and so on, don't worry, it won't go away. AAA companies will still want to take this route and sell you uh, high-end graphics before something stylistic. That's what I can tell you already. So don't worry. This doesn't mean it goes away. I just say it's a shift from this kind of wanting to go more realistic to let's go stylistic to kind of stand out of the crowd, and that's the most important part. You want to stand out of the crowd, and this is with realistic graphics, like I said, very difficult. And even if you manage to do it, it may be only for a year or so, and then someone else will top you, and then people will already not remember your game. Maybe they will remember your game if your game is good, but they won't remember your graphics. Yeah, and with that I want to finish this. So there are these 3 points. So really, first one is money, the other thing is standing out of the crowd, and the third point is kind of we have already seen this shift in another art style than games. So with that I want to end this video, and thank you if you managed to listen up to this point. I hope you found this interesting. And if you have different opinions, or even if you have the same opinion but you want to say something about it, attach something, or like I said, if you have a different opinion, then definitely let me know in the comments, and we can have a discussion about it. So thank you for watching. Hello everyone, I'm working right now on a turn-based RPG. It's a game I'm building myself from scratch. I'm doing the models, the animations, the textures, and of course the scripting and everything myself. You can check it out on itch.io or on GameJolt. The links are in the description. There is a demo version that is focusing on the combat system and the progression system. And you can download it for free, and feedback is always welcome. Thank you.